Hi guys, oh my god, now back in 2022 when the Tories were in charge, they introduced an electronic travel authorisation scheme as part of the Nationality and Borders Act. Remember those days when Suella Braverman was Home Secretary and she was constantly on TV complaining about immigration and borders? So this particular scheme is a bit like what happens when you travel in the US, where you have to fill in a form in order to travel around. Now this applies to the UK but for people outside the EU. This is not an EU scheme but a UK one, but because of Brexit it adds an extra layer of problems that didn't exist before. BBC Northern Ireland here explains some of the issues it will cause. Now I want to apologise for the quality of the video. This is a problem on the BBC Northern Ireland side.
If you're a non-EU traveller who wants to see the Giant's Causeway or visit Titanic Belfast, from today there's another thing you'll need to bring, called an electronic travel authorisation. The island of Ireland is marketed as one single destination, with 70% of overseas visitors who come here arriving via the Republic. There are real fears among those working in tourism that this change could mean people won't bother making the journey to Northern Ireland.
If you have a group of 50 people who are hiring a coach out, all of a sudden you have £500 to your group's cost, and that really will make people think, if I'm travelling between Dublin and Donegal, is it really worth going via the Causeway Coast and stopping off at Giant's Causeway if I have to go through the bureaucracy of a visa application and the cost attached to it as well?
So how would you feel in the future about having to pay £10 to do that journey? Would it deter you from coming here or not?
I don't think we would have come...
Yeah, it was like a last minute decision to do a day trip up to Belfast, so...
So the less hassle the better?
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like a pretty simple administrative task. We do it for the US anyway, so...
So you'd still come?
Yeah.
The Economy Minister has warned the impact could be devastating, and he's calling on Westminster for an exemption.
There are options and opportunities for the British Government and the Home Office to look at this again, to recognise this isn't fixing their immigration problem, this is something which is damaging our economy. Well, we proposed an exemption, or at the very least a 7-day exemption for people who are coming into the North but not going on to Britain, and that would cover most of our international visitors.
A UK government spokesperson said this will deliver a more streamlined digital immigration system which will be quicker and more secure, and that it was committed to working to ensure the ETA requirement is communicated effectively and to mitigate against it being seen as a barrier to cross-border tourism. It's understood ministers will continue to press for change ahead of the final phase of the scheme being implemented in April. Clodagh Rice, BBC Newsline.
Okay, so the devolved government in Northern Ireland is saying, look, please don't go ahead with this, and the UK government's response is, don't worry, we're going to communicate this extra bureaucracy to people. So once again, Northern Ireland is going to be thrown under a bus because of Brexit. Now, how is this related to Brexit? Because of the Tories and their plan to reinforce the border, the problem is that any checks that would be carried out will have to be carried out in, UK territory. So that's okay if you're arriving by plane, to London. Okay, you have to fill out this form or whatever, and that's fine. But if you're arriving in the Republic of Ireland and you decide, hey, I'd like to go and visit Belfast, there's the museum, the Titanic Museum there. Well, if you want to do that, you'll technically have to fill out this form and you'll have to pay £10 for that visa. Now it's not a huge amount of money and it's not a huge amount of bureaucracy, but it could put off a significant number of people. Miss it, look, what's the point of all of this? Just leave it. And maybe if you don't have the document filled out in time, you may have to cancel your trip. So it's an extra layer of bureaucracy for no reason, really. See, once again, the Tories decided, let's go ahead with this without actually checking whether we could, whether it be a good idea or not. And once again, and I mentioned this at the time, I think I mentioned this on a live stream, the Tories don't care about Northern Ireland. They call themselves the Conservative and Unionist Party, but this is going to damage Northern Ireland. But they don't care. They didn't care. They cared more about protecting the borders of England, or at least GB. Because what it will mean now is that some people outside the EU, we're talking about people from Australia, from the United States, from Japan, from China, wherever, if they arrive in the Republic of Ireland, and most of the people who eventually get to Northern Ireland, because there are very few international flights, the people who eventually get to Northern Ireland pass through the Republic, and a lot of them may not be willing to bear this extra cost or this extra level of bureaucracy. And this is going to damage the Northern Ireland economy, which at this moment is struggling, which needs an injection of cash. So I do hope that the Home Office will make an exemption for Northern Ireland. I don't know if they will or not, because then if they do, you'll have the right-wing press up in arms saying, oh, there's an open border between Northern Ireland and GB because there's all these immigrants flowing in. You know, the scaremongering will start. But we're talking about a very small number of people, and we're talking about, you know, protecting tourism in Northern Ireland. Shouldn't that be at least some sort of priority? But once again, I think the new Labour government is not going to tackle this. They have said, as they've mentioned in other cases, yeah, we're going to communicate the problem. Remember the other one where it came to shipping goods from from GB to Northern Ireland. The response from the government was, we're going to communicate this. We're not going to stop it, but we're going to communicate it to businesses. And I think here, once again, the response is, we're going to communicate the problem. We're not actually going to tackle the problem. We're not going to find a workaround. No, we'll just communicate it. And that's not going to be good enough. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.